You ever have a moment so sharp, so final, it slices through everything you thought you knew? That moment came for me when my mom heard where I was having my wedding, and just said, "In the backyard?" Then, without missing a beat, "Seriously, Hannah? That's not a wedding. That's a budget picnic." And then? She hung up. No tears. No questions. No curiosity. Just a quiet dismissal, like I'd told her I was getting married in a parking lot. Right then, I knew she wouldn't be coming. Not because she was sick. Not because of timing or travel or some last-minute emergency. No. She wasn't coming because in her eyes, it simply wasn't worth it. My wedding wasn't grand enough. No glitz, no stage, no spotlight for her to shine in. That I sat on our little porch for what felt like hours, the cold creeping through my sweatshirt and the splintery wood pressing into my legs. I held my phone like it might buzz again. Like maybe she'd call back and say it was a joke, or that she was just upset and didn't mean it, but no. The silence grew thick, like fog settling in your bones. Eventually, Elias came outside holding 2 steaming mugs of chamomile tea. He didn't need to ask what happened. He just handed me the mug and took a seat beside me, like that quiet moment said everything words couldn't. "She's not coming," I whispered. That he gave a slight nod. "Because it's in the backyard," I added, my laugh bitter and small. No marble floors. No golden chandeliers. No engraved invitations or filet mignon plated like artwork. I shook my head. It's not the picture she had in her head of her daughter's wedding. Elias didn't say anything for a moment. Then, gently, he said, "Because she pictured herself in it." And just like that, it hit me. It was never really about me. It never had been. She didn't ask how I strung those lights across our yard myself, hundreds of tiny LEDs wired by hand into old wine bottles I'd collected for months. She never asked how Elias and I dug up every inch of the backyard to plant wildflowers from scratch. She didn't ask why we invited just 25 people or what it meant to say our vows in the same place where we'd built our life. The only thing she asked, weeks ago, with a smirk, was, "You're not making it potluck style, are you?" And she didn't even wait for an answer. It's wild, isn't it? How some people think a wedding is only as valuable as its Instagram aesthetic. My mom never asked how I felt. She didn't care who I was marrying or why. She only cared about what people would say, what shoes they'd wear, and what kind of photos would end up online. She didn't want to be part of my wedding. She wanted to be seen at it. That I sent her an invitation anyway, an actual printed one. Embossed, tied with soft silk ribbon, spritzed with lavender oil because I wanted her to feel thought of. She never sent an RSVP. But she did send a text the day it arrived. "Looks like something a Girl Scout made." I almost laughed. She clearly forgot I was homeschooled for 3 years, because she made that choice. So what do you do when the woman who raised you tells you, without yelling, without slamming doors, that your biggest day doesn't even deserve a ride across town? You grieve. And then you keep going. You hang the lights anyway. You press your dress. You rewrite the vows you want to say. And you film every moment, because the space I held in my mother's world? It always came with strings. That I was the second daughter. The quieter one. The one in hand-me-downs and hand-me-over memories. The one who didn't even make it into half the family photo albums. At my sister Lacey's wedding. The one mom still brings up at dinner parties and book clubs. I wasn't a bridesmaid. I wasn't even seated with the family. I was behind the flower arch holding a clipboard and a walkie-talkie, making sure the mini crab cakes didn't run out and the string quartet didn't jump the timing. That I still remember the shoes I wore that day, $9 clearance flats that gave me blisters before the salad course. I remember Lacey's dress, imported silk, hand-stitched, cost more than my entire college tuition. I remember how Mom adjusted her veil with tears in her eyes like she was fixing a crown. When I tried to step into the room for a quick photo, she blocked the doorway and whispered, "You'll get your moment someday." That moment never came. What I got instead of support were assignments. Carry this, double-check that, stay useful, don't get in the way. The only photo I show up in from Lacey's wedding weekend? A grainy shot where I'm off to the side, wiping crumbs off the dessert table like I was part of the catering staff. Someone once tagged me and labeled me the help. I laughed out loud. I never bothered to correct it. By that point, I knew exactly where I stood. So when I told Mom I wanted to keep things simple, something small, close to nature, no bridal party, no long toasts, just heartfelt vows and fresh bread shared between friends, she blinked like I'd just confessed to robbing a bank. Small, she repeated, almost horrified. Then she pursed her lips. That's disappointing, Hannah. Don't you want something people will remember? I wanted something I would remember. I wanted to look out and see the faces that mattered. I wanted the man I chose. Music drifting under open skies. Plates passed hand to hand, not cold chicken slapped down by servers in bow ties. I didn't need a cake the size of a car engine or fake ice sculptures. But the way Mom looked at me, like I was shrinking, like I was making her look small, told me everything. Lacey's called the week after that. For a second, I thought maybe she was reaching out. Maybe she'd noticed how distant everything had gotten. But no. She jumped right in. Mom's seriously worried about you, she said. She thinks you're having a meltdown or something. She says you're trying to sabotage your own wedding because you're afraid of attention. I let her talk. I said, thanks for letting me know. And then I hung up. They didn't get it. They never had. This wasn't sabotage. This was me taking back my story. This wedding wasn't about spectacle or saving face for the family tree. It wasn't a PR stunt. It wasn't a Facebook photo op for people I hadn't spoken to since 7th grade. This was my day. And I wasn't going to plan it like I needed a permission slip. The morning of the wedding, the sky was gray, but soft gray, not storm gray. The kind that makes colors glow like paint on wet canvas. I stood barefoot on the back steps, looking at the mismatched chairs we'd borrowed from all over the neighborhood. Each one was tied with scraps of ribbon we'd dyed by hand. The breeze started to move, swaying the paper lanterns strung between the trees. They danced like they were breathing. Inside, Claire was steaming my dress, a simple cream gown with deep pockets. She made it herself. Every single stitch held a piece of her heart. Malik's cousin, Jamal, was setting out little cards on the long, wooden table. Not fancy. Just names printed on plantable seed paper so every guest could take theirs home and grow something. That I walked through the space slowly, touching each chair, each jar holding herbs and field flowers. Nothing was random. Every detail was an act of love. This wasn't Pinterest perfect. It was personal. There was no bridal suite. No hair and makeup team. Just my reflection in our tiny bathroom mirror. I twisted my curls into a loose bun and tucked 2 gardenias behind my ear. When I stepped into the dress, it didn't feel like a costume. It felt like I was holding myself together. Claire caught my eye in the mirror. You okay? She asked. That I nodded. I think so. She stepped behind me and adjusted a strap that had slipped. You look like you. I smiled. I've never felt more like me. At exactly 4:12 p.m., the ceremony began. No grand entrance. No string quartet. Just birds singing, the wind rustling the leaves, and the soft creak of the gate as our guests entered like they were walking into a sacred moment. Malik was standing at the end of the path, our garden path, now an aisle, wearing a deep navy suit and this lopsided, nervous smile. His hands were shaking when he saw me. So were mine. That we didn't have an officiant. No rehearsed readings. No spotlight. We looked at each other and spoke from the heart. I don't remember the exact words, but I remember the feeling. It felt like standing still in a world that never stopped moving. It felt like being truly seen, not watched, not judged, seen. After the kiss, everyone clapped, not politely, but like they meant it. And that sound, all that love wrapped up in noise, was my favorite sound in the world. Dinner came from big enamel pots, steaming and delicious. No servers. No 3-course timing. Just bowls passed down the long table, laughter bubbling up into the air, someone quietly singing along to Van Morrison playing from a Bluetooth speaker borrowed from our neighbors. When night fell, the lights came on. All those late-night hours of wiring and climbing ladders finally paid off. The whole yard glowed like we trapped fireflies in every branch. Claire leaned over and whispered, "This looks like a movie set." But it didn't. It looked like home. And as I laughed, danced barefoot, and leaned into everything we'd created, I knew deep in my heart, the people who chose not to come would never really understand what they missed. Not in real time. Not in full color. And definitely not in the way it actually felt. They wouldn't see how Elias looked at me during our first dance, like the rest of the world had vanished. They wouldn't hear the kind words spoken by the people who really knew our story. They wouldn't taste the lemon thyme lemonade or the honey fig cake or catch the scent of rosemary drifting off the grill. They'd just see pictures, and by the time they did, it would already be too late. We hadn't planned on posting anything right away. Our friend Bree, she's a documentary filmmaker, not some wedding content creator, offered to film the day as her gift to us. She didn't shoot it like a wedding. She filmed it like a memory. No overhead drone shots, no slow-mo veil toss, just us. Setting tables, laughing, tying ribbons, holding hands under hanging lights. 2 weeks after the ceremony, she sent us a short film. Just a minute and a half long. No narration, no titles, just a soft instrumental track playing beneath quiet moments. It opened on Elias rubbing his palms against his slacks, nervous. Then cut to me wrapping a silk ribbon around a mason jar filled with wildflowers. The final shot? The two of us dancing barefoot on the flagstone patio, with lanterns bobbing above like stars pretending to come closer. That I cried. Sat on the floor of our living room and let the tears fall as I watched it 3 times in a row. Then I called Elias in. He stood quietly while it played. When it ended, he just breathed deep and whispered, "She made it feel ancient." I nodded, then asked, would it be petty to post it? He smiled in that quiet way of his. Sometimes what they call petty is just finally telling the truth. So I posted it. Quietly. No hashtags. No explanations. Just, October 14th, home. Love. Then I put my phone on silent and went to bed. By the time I woke up, the views had passed 18,000. By lunch, it hit 40. By dinner time, someone from a small design blog messaged me, "Is this your wedding? Can we feature it in our upcoming issue?" I stared at the screen like I'd misread it. I hadn't seen that coming. By the end of that week, we'd been featured in 2 online magazines and a viral roundup titled, "The Most Breathtaking Backyard Wedding You'll Ever See." I didn't feel triumphant. It wasn't revenge. It felt like I was being seen, for real. Not by strangers, but by people who hadn't already rehearsed a version of me they liked better. Then the call started. First, my sister, Ray. She left a voicemail that started with, "Wow," and ended with, "So, why didn't you tell us it was going to be that beautiful?" Then a text from my aunt, "That wedding video is everywhere. I didn't know it was yours." Stunning. And finally, my mom. No call. Just a single-line text, "Is this the wedding I wasn't invited to?" I stared at her message for a long time. Technically, she had been invited. She just chose not to respond. The next morning, she followed up, "You made us look awful, Lila. People keep asking why we weren't there. You could have warned us." Warned them. I read that line again. And again. I couldn't tell what upset her more, that the wedding happened without her, or that it was beautiful without her. It wasn't about feelings. It never had been. It was about appearance. It always was. I didn't answer right away. What could I even say to someone more bothered about missing a photo op than the actual moment? 3 days later, Elias watched the video again, wine glass in hand, and when it ended, he just sat quietly for a while before saying, "You should let her see the whole thing. Not because she deserves it, but because she clearly doesn't get what she missed." So I sent her a message that if you really want to understand what you skipped, be at River and Pine Studio this Friday at 3. You'll watch the full footage. No edits. No frills, she replied 2 hours later. Fine, she showed up 10 minutes late. Of course she did. Wore pearls, heels, and that stiff air of self-importance like she was visiting a charity she might sponsor. She walked into the screening room like she was the guest of honor. No small talk. No hug. Bree had arranged 2 chairs and a monitor in a quiet little studio room. The lights dimmed. I pressed play. She folded her arms in the first 5 minutes. I kept watching her out of the corner of my eye, waiting for the scoff or eye roll or sarcastic comment. None came. There was no voiceover. No soundtrack. Just the real sounds, the crunch of gravel underfoot, laughter echoing through the garden, clinking glasses, and my shaky voice reading my vows. Elias stumbled over his vows. There was a catch in his throat when he said, "You make me feel like I finally came home." At minute 12, I saw her shift in her seat. At minute 18, she blinked hard. At minute 20, when the screen showed us swaying under string lights, lanterns glowing like warm planets overhead, she exhaled like she'd been holding her breath the entire time. When the film ended, I paused it on a single frame, our backyard, now empty. Just candle stubs, overturned chairs, and the last traces of a perfect night. She didn't say anything for a long while, then finally, "It looked expensive." I stayed quiet. She cleared her throat. "And you didn't say it would be like that." I turned to her, keeping my voice even. "Would it have made a difference?" She opened her mouth, hesitated, then shut it again. "I invited you," I said. "You declined." "You didn't make it clear. I wasn't auditioning for your approval, Mom," I cut in. "I was getting married." She looked away. I didn't rush to fill the silence. When she finally met my eyes again, her tone turned sharper. Defensive. "You made us look like we didn't care." I tilted my head slightly. "Did you?" She flinched, just the smallest twitch in the corner of her mouth, but didn't respond. I stood up, walked to the door, and opened it. "Thanks for coming." She stood halfway, then paused, sat back down for just a second longer. "I didn't know it would be beautiful," she said. I nodded, softly. "That's the point. You didn't care to find out." She didn't hug me when she left. I hadn't expected her to, but as the door clicked shut behind her, I felt something shift. Not forgiveness. Not closure. Just clarity. I didn't hear from her after that. No call, no follow-up text, no half-hearted apology wrapped in guilt. Just silence, and honestly, it felt more real than anything we'd said to each other in years. I didn't go to Thanksgiving. There was no invite for Christmas. No dramatic disowning, just absence. The kind of quiet exile that doesn't scream. You just look around one day and realize no one's standing on your side of the room, and I was okay. Not in the Hollywood ending kind of way. Not triumphant. But solid. Grounded. The kind of okay that comes when you stop knocking on a door that was never going to open. Instead, I poured everything into the life I was building, with Elias, with our work, with the quiet joy of starting fresh. Bree's full version of the film was picked up by an arts collective in Seattle. They screened it in a gallery under the title, Intimate Architecture. We flew in for the opening. People cried watching it. One couple asked if we were actors. I smiled and told them, no. Just a woman who got married in her backyard because that's where her life really began. 6 months passed, then one afternoon, I came home to a small box on the porch. No return address. Just my name, written in the kind of careful cursive I'd recognize anywhere. Inside was a photo. Lacey's wedding. One I'd never seen before. In it, I was in the background, holding a tray of champagne flutes. My face turned slightly, eyes focused on something just beyond the frame. On the back, in familiar handwriting, 2 lines, "I looked right past you that day. I see you now. No name. No signature, but I didn't need one. I didn't frame it. Didn't text her. Didn't call. I just slid the photo into the back of our wedding album, tucked behind an image of Elias spinning me beneath those paper lanterns, both of us barefoot, laughing, lit from below by a constellation of tiny glowing bulbs. That's the story I'll tell. If someone asks about our wedding, I'll say we did it our way. I'll tell them we planted wildflowers where roses were expected. That we fed our guests from our own hands, not some impersonal checklist. That we danced on gravel and laughed under moons made of paper and string, and that we invited everyone who mattered, even the ones who never showed. because in the end, a wedding isn't about who attends, that it's about who stays, and when I look at the photos now, I don't see what's missing, that I see what stayed.